Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Data Miners with the indefatigable Peter Heath from Venue Performance and me, Martin Fullard, who I just asked the questions. I don't really know anything about it. How are you, Peter?
No, very good, thanks. Not fatigued at all, actually.
No,
So,
no,
yeah,
not at all. We'll say that to after your charity bike ride, which everyone else will talk about another time. There's some
yeah.
fun to be had there. Now, we started this series a couple of months ago to discuss data among venues and to chart the increase in bookings that we would hopefully see. Of course, when we did start this in the middle of a pandemic, there were no bookings. All we had was a very straight line on a very uninspired bar graph. But as I'm sure you're about to elaborate, things are now going in the right direction. After the Prime Minister gave us the green light on the 22nd of February, or rather gave us the roadmap, we have had a surge in event bookings and contracts being signed right from now until the end of the year and beyond. So really encouraging signs. Now, in your latest feature for Conference News, Peter, you note that bookings, signed contracts have increased in the region of about 400%. Now, on its own, that sounds like quite a remarkable number, but as ever, I'm sure you're going to give us some context to that and put some meat on the bone.
Yes, you're right, Martin. January and February were rather dry months from both analytically and cash-wise from a venue's point of view. But March has experienced the hockey curve, and yeah, you're right. In the article that I wrote for you, we talk about 400% and whopping numbers like that in terms of increases, and they are there. It is a massive number, but it's not huge in terms of volume. Let's be clear. The volume's not there, but the intent clearly is. And I think that the latest government announcements, and we're doing this even later this month, so I think that this is only going to increase in the coming months. So it all kicked off in March. Basically, is the news for this month.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. So I thought what we'd do is we'd break it down into the different event types, because that's the way you structured the feature to make it more kind of accessible and easier to understand. So we can all together try and build a picture of the landscape as we see it now. Now, on conferences, I think that's where we'll start. You noted that the number was good, but not as good as we would have liked, because I think we all knew it was going to take a time to come back. Now, you said that bookings from March have gone from 0.4 in January, 0.7 in February to 1.9 for March, so a 4 times multiple increase. Can you perhaps put some more meat on the bone for that for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think conferences are the kind of the meat and two veg of the industry, aren't they? Obviously, your conference news. That's where the majority of the volume and the cash is for the industry. So that's really the one event type that we want to see coming back in earnest. And I think also conferences is a bellwether for the industry in terms of intent from clients as well. So conferences is where we started to look at the data from, and when they were being booked, what size, no big ones are being booked yet, and when they're being booked for, and they're all being booked, as you would expect, back end of the year, mainly back end of the year, a little bit into next year, but mainly back end of this year. So the bookings have started, not huge ones, but they have started back end of the year and to trickle into next year as well. But I think that's only going to get bigger and better in April and May as well. So yeah, we'll keep a very close eye on conferences.
Yeah, at the time of filming, it's 4th of May. Not sure exactly what date this is coming out, but the 17th of May is the next big unlocking of the economy, where larger indoor events for up to 1,000 people will be permitted. So maybe that will give people the extra impetus to book. We wait and see. Now, in the last issue of Conference News, the theme of the magazine was outdoor events. So that kind of leads me on to the next section, which is summer parties. Considering that it's looking increasingly likely open from the 21st of June, but most events not really scheduled, or large events, until September. We've got that sort of summer period where I think people will be testing the delegate confidence and that sort of stuff. What can you tell us about summer parties?
Well, again, it's March data, so we weren't as further forward in terms of confidence and government guidelines as we are now, even though nothing has technically changed, we are talking a lot about more confidence in the market. But I think summer has possibly come a little bit too late for this year, because summer's nearly here in terms of booking and what have you, and the confidence isn't quite there yet. So summer hasn't really kicked off yet in terms of volume and size and commitment. So summer parties are still really quite low. There might be a late flurry, who knows? And the way things are going, actually, again, the confidence and the news reports are all really, really positive. So there might just well be a last minute flurry of summer parties, which would be great.
Yeah, wouldn't it just? Now, in your most recent column, you note that you're actually more optimistic about Christmas parties. And I guess we've sort of now entered the season where those start to get booked up. So give us a bit of a background on where Christmas parties were, kind of stand in terms of bookings in March is what we're talking about, and what trends you maybe expect to see when we analyze April's data.
I mean, the thing to note about Christmas, of course, is that there's a longer lead time for Christmas. So, we're only, again, this is March data. So there's a whole 3/4 of a year to go before the Christmas party. So there's plenty of time to book the Christmas party. And Christmas parties, there's usually a late flurry after the summer period as well. So Christmas party bookings experiences a big surge in early September or post summer holiday. So that I think is back in play, and if all the unmasked scrapping of the social distancing is happening, I think Christmas parties really could pick up. But they've started. They have started already. A couple have come in of juicy ones, and I think that's only going to pick up as we go through the year. So I'm quite optimistic about the Christmas party market, actually.
Good, that's really good to hear. And because we didn't all have one last year, and I missed the Mash Media one the year before because I went to Ireland. It feels like I haven't had one for about 2 or 3 years. So I'm going to blow my
one.
Yeah, quite. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is banqueting, and I know we approach banqueting a bit differently, because while for as long as we've been around, we've always considered that part of the events mix as standard, and obviously it's all the same venues that get involved with it. What COVID has sort of showed is that actually banqueting is a very different beast, and certainly treated as such by government, because it doesn't follow any of the event industry guidance. All the banqueting type events would all have to adhere to general hospitality guidance rather than event guidance, which is worlds away different. So we're sort of dealing with a different beast there, and we might not even know it. So what can you sort of tell us about banqueting and how maybe confirmed contracts might be shaping up?
Yeah, well, banqueting was, we were very gloomy about banqueting in the last couple of sessions we did and articles we wrote, because banqueting doesn't go very well with COVID. So we were very gloomy about that. But actually, banqueting has seen a little bit of an uptick, which is really encouraging. And I think that might have something to do with the food producers in the events industry, the big catering businesses, the CSs, the CH&Cos, the Party Ingredients, the Green and Fortunes. They've all worked so hard at adjusting and adapting their banqueting and their food-related solutions to customers. And I think that's given customers a lot more confidence that they can actually eat or have a food-centered event with a lot of confidence as well. So I think banqueting is going to come back, and the early signs are that it's had a bit of a bounce, which is really encouraging, especially for the catering organisations, because it's not just a room hire thing then. So, yeah, banqueting. Watch banqueting. It could be the dark horse, the Scurlope champ. For those of you who remember greyhound racing, it's come from behind and whips everybody at the last minute.
That'd be interesting. I wonder how many of our viewers actually are fans of greyhound racing. That would be interesting to find that one out, if there's a data set for it. Now, the last sector I want to talk to you about, you've broken it into 4 categories of meetings, weddings, filming, awards, and they're all respectable in their own rights. But I'd like to sort of look at meetings, and this is the big question mark over the industry. We know large events, are really important, you know, and people are really investing a lot of money in them. We want them to come back, but actually the small meetings make up a lot of what the events industry actually represents. You know, they're a very, very fundamental fundamental component of our industry. But obviously, with the rise in popularity of video conferencing, like Zoom and Teams and all the rest of it, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that's part of the market finds its head once we've had the full unlocking. So can you give us any sort of indication of where we stand with meetings and that sort of event at the moment?
There's not a huge amount of data on meetings, and I think it's partly because the very nature of meetings are often relatively short lead times. So I think that, again, we haven't seen much movement in them in the March data, but I think that could change very quickly going into late spring and early summer. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. One of the things that we've done as a result of the whole remote working thing is we're going to start measuring hybrid as well, or whether or not meetings have got a hybrid element to them. And actually, we're going to be measuring that for all events as well. So we in the data, I'll be reporting and tracking the hybrid element. So meetings, I think, by their very nature, are often last minute. They're smaller, they're easier. As we know, in London, there's a whole range of places where you can have a meeting, although a lot of them are closed at the moment as well, including hotels. So I think there wasn't a huge amount of movement in meetings for March, but I think that could change and could go a little bit bonkers. And actually, if we watch the hybrid element as well, that could be really fascinating to see whether it wasn't just a meeting, physical meeting, whether there was a dial-in, Zooming kind of video conferencing element to it. So that will be an extra dimension that we've never measured before. So that's going to be really fascinating.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see sort of how that finds its head, and look forward to our next podcast chat in a month's time, where hopefully we'll have a little bit more insight. So I'm just going to wrap it up by putting you on a very uncomfortable spot by saying, obviously we've seen the line graph shoot up in March. Do you think that in April that will continue to accelerate upwards, or do you think the growth will perhaps steady on level off a little bit?
Well, I can only see it going in one direction, really, because everything else is going in the same direction, which is the confidence, the unlock, the government guidelines. Everything is moving towards. I mean, there's lots of people saying they want to bring forward the guidelines, which I don't think the government will do. So I can only see it continuing to the hockey curve that has started, fingers crossed, in March. I can only see that continuing. But I'm not a futurologist, so I don't want to be hung, drawn, and quartered just because I think it's the case. But very shortly we'll find out.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And futurologist, yeah, that must be an easy job. You just make wild predictions.
Exactly.
Rubbish. Okay, well, Peter, fascinating as ever. And to those of you watching, if you want to read the full insight in Peter's into Venue Performance's data, pick up the latest edition of Conference News, which you can find on the website. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Martin.